A treasure house of special collection, or the main reading room and 80 miles of bookshelves, or both. I am Barbara Lee Diamonstein, and we are at the New York Public Library with its newly appointed chairman, Richard Salomon. In the number of months that you've been here, have there been any special surprises or striking experiences that you've had?
Well, every day I'm down here, I learn something. I am absolutely amazed at the wealth of treasure that there is in this library. I'm amazed at the dedication of curators and of the various management people I've met who have, I think particularly of Ed Holmgren at the branch libraries, who runs the branch libraries, of his understanding, of his tolerance for new ideas and his willingness to explore. I think much of that is reflected in the actual operations of the branches. I think that the branch libraries of the city of New York really give a greater range of service, strange services in certain respects, than any place you could think of, and things that aren't known at all. For example, the best job referral service in the city is in the New York Public Library, in the Mid-Manhattan Library.
How does that work?
They make it a point. They have a volunteer who handles and who puts together all of the various job openings, both municipal and private and state, who can tell them where to apply and how to apply, what kind of skills are needed to fill which kinds of jobs, all these things that most people don't realize that the library is into.
If a member of the audience wanted to avail themselves of that job referral service that you mentioned, how is that done? Where do they call?
They call the Mid-Manhattan Library, and there they will get referred right to the job referral service.
Obviously, that is a more recent aspect of the library's work. Needless to say, libraries are the cornerstone of society. Needless to say, too, with an increase in educational institutions and more libraries available to wider numbers of people, how does this institution change in the light of a changing public that it serves?
Well, I think the library is reaching out to people to a much greater degree than most other institutions, more than museums, for example. The library will go out of its way to get to people. They don't run many bookmobiles anymore, but the bookmobile was a perfect illustration of what I'm talking about. The branches are very convenient to almost anyone living in any one of the three boroughs. There are a lot of them, and they are open anyway 4 days a week, some of them more than that, and they're fully staffed with people who seem to care about seeing to it that the person who wanders in gets what he wants. I would say that they, generally speaking, care very much about rendering service. That means the lending of books, perhaps, but it also means the giving of information, and they work hard to do it properly.
More and more museums see themselves as educational institutions, and I think more and more of the public sees this library as a museum. In fact, a number of your curators, the curators of this library, have been generous enough to join us today and show some of the treasures that are contained within the Mid-Manhattan branch of the Public Library, as you referred to the 42nd Street.
No, there's a...
Can you explain that confusion?
Yes, the Mid-Manhattan Library is a branch library. It is not in this building, and it is over in the old Arnold Constable building at 10 East 40th Street.
I hear there are some plans to recycle the old Arnold Constable building into a new library. What will you use that building for?
That the part of the Mid-Manhattan is presently in part of the Arnold Constable building, and part of it is in 10 East 40th Street. The thing that's in 10 East 40th Street will move out. That's rented space, and it will move into the Arnold Constable building, which is library-owned space. In other words, when we get all through, the public won't see any great difference, but all of the Mid-Manhattan Library will be housed in the Arnold Constable building.
You are well known and widely admired as a very successful businessman, a committed citizen, a generous philanthropist. You've had all sorts of honors and a great deal of satisfaction in many of the jobs that you've taken. Here you are about to embark on what is a $52 million fundraising drive at a time of rising costs and less money available for such things. Why'd you take on such a job at this time in your life?
I did my very best, Barbara Lee, to avoid ending my career as a clinker. And I carefully checked around to see whether we had a chance of making the goal. And I do think that we probably will make it. I think particularly because of the generosity of Brooke Astor, who has just given us a $5 million challenge grant to be matched by $10 million that we can raise ourselves, that a good piece of the problem we face will be solved through those means. It isn't really my job to raise the whole 52 million either, because 13 million had been raised prior to my getting here, which left 39.
It's 25% of the job done. That's terrific.
It was done, and now with this 5 million challenge and 10 million to make the challenge, we should be pretty much halfway there, more than halfway there.
What's been your greatest pleasure in the number of months that you've been here?
I think meeting the people involved. The people, both the Board of Trustees, I admire their own involvement and their willingness to give of their time and energy. I admire the curators I've met and the administrators I've met who really seem dedicated to the job of public service, which is so refreshing. I'm connected with the university, as you probably know, and there is a willingness here to go out to meet, which you don't find in a university or anywhere else that I've ever been associated with.
You mentioned earlier that you didn't expect to have any clinkers at this stage in your career, nor do we. We are long accustomed to beautiful music from you, Richard Salomon, and we look forward to more and better.
Thank you, Barbara Lee. I aim to play it for you.
Miss Roth, what is the scope and the size of the print collection, and how did you acquire it? How did the library acquire it?
Well, we have about 160,000 original prints and drawings, which came to us, I would think, for the most part, as gifts, or made possible, purchases made possible, through the income of private funds left to us by print collectors. We arrange our prints and also illustrate books according to the artist. And I brought out a few items here which I thought might be of great interest to you. Actually, the earliest view of New York, when it was still called New Amsterdam, circa 1626 to 28. You see, there's just a few houses, a fort and a windmill, and Indians in canoe.
What is this beautiful color print with French inscription?
Actually, this is a gouache, a watercolor painted on
Why don't we hold it up?
And I will hold it up because this is one of our greatest treasures. It depicts the French Huguenots who were trying to find a haven in this country where they could practice their own religion. They hoped to find it in northern Florida, Georgia, and
That's in Augustine?
and this is near Jacksonville, actually. It's northern Florida, and these are the Indians of that region. They are not Seminoles, they are the Timucua Indians. And actually, the French were so impressed by the Indians. As you see, the Indian chief there is very, very tall. And the report the French sent back to France is, of course, that they seem to be so beautifully built, the Indians. Well, here, actually, this is the event of a second expedition when the René de Laudonnière, the leader of the expedition, came back to the same spot and found that the Indians venerated the column with the coat of arms of the French king. That's right. They planted this column there at their first expedition 2 years prior to this event.
What's the date of the squash?
Well, we say 1564. Actually, we don't think the artist sat there and drew it while everybody posed for him. He was then he had to return, actually flee from this spot because the Spaniards went after the French, and he was able, really, and successful to flee and then settled in England, and so we think he painted it in England, but the event depicted is 1564. And in the history books it says it's the first American watercolor.
This very gouache.
It's supposed to be, but actually it's the events depicted is 1564.
The collection is also widely known for its collection of Japanese prints. How extensive is that, and what is the genesis of that collection?
I don't think that we have the largest collection by any means in this country, but we have a very fine collection, and particularly the work of one Japanese artist, Utamaro, is very well represented in the collection. We have perhaps 133 prints, but they are superb in condition, and we are very proud to have them in our collection.
I'm observing too
These were, of course,
Dura.
That's right. That's a woodcut, and I brought it out not because this is our oldest print we have, but it's a very popular one. It shows a rhinoceros that was presented as a gift to the King of Portugal in 1515. Albert Stuart had never seen the rhinoceros. It died before he had a chance to see it. But he got a description of it from a fellow artist who said it looked like a turtle. And so he had seen a rough sketch of it. So he gave it sort of plates and made it look like a turtle and spotted as well. And it's not at all a rhinoceros. But this has been copied by artists after that till the 18th century. And so it's a very untrue picture of a rhinoceros. This is our latest acquisition, made possible through the donation of a California gentleman who knows the young artist Molly Burgess personally.
It's very Japanese in
Isn't
feeling.
it? And look, Molly Burgess designed this book herself. Everything is. Look at the colors, isn't it beautifully done? And also the binding is the Oriental fashion, Chinese, Japanese. You see,
And Japanese
she chose
paper.
beautiful Japanese paper. There is a book of typed poems called Still, and copyright in 1975. Forget now; it's very limited edition. And you see how beautiful her paper is that she selected with grasses in it. And here, some more leaves.
Perhaps you'd hold up an example of one of her.
Now, yes, let me do that. Here, for example, these are typed poems which she arranged in appropriate fashion. You see,
You could hold that up.
each design is different. See, I'm just skipping to a few very interesting pages here. Each one, there's absolutely no repeat. Then, see here again. I don't know where she found the patience to do this. It's absolutely incredible. She showed it to me about 2 years ago, and at that time, we just simply didn't have the money to buy it. And then a donor made it possible, and we are delighted to have the book.
And other than the usual problems of finance and funding and staff, what is the biggest problem that you find these days in dealing with the library?
Oh, I think it's pollution, air pollution, and leaks, dust, soot, and really in space. And those are, I hope, problems which can be solved.
Well, if anyone can, it seems that you will be one of those persons who will. It's been a delight to talk with you, Elizabeth Roth, and thank you. Frank Mattson, you are in charge of the rare book division. Can you describe this room for us?
On the right, hanging on the railing, are two portraits of James Lennox, the founder of the Lennox Library and a great collector of Americana and Bibles, whose collections form the nucleus of the holdings of the rare book division. The Gutenberg Bible is the cornerstone of Mr. Lennox's Bible collection. It was the first Gutenberg Bible to be brought to these shores at that time the outrageous sum of $2,600.
How does one get to see the Gutenberg Bible if you are a visitor to this branch?
You just come to room 303 and ring the doorbell and say you'd like to see the Bible. We also have an attractive little brochure describing it, which we give to readers.
I know that one of the things that you have in your collection is the only known copy of Columbus's announcement.
Right, of the first printing,
Yes.
first unauthorized printing in Barcelona. And this is probably the most well-known illustration in the book, the kind of sailing ship which Columbus would have used. It is unique in being the only complete copy known.
How did you acquire that particular volume?
This was part of Mr. Lennox's own library. These are his rather finely penciled notes on the copy. Well, this globe is referred to as the Hunt-Lennox globe. It was found in Paris by Mr. Hunt, the architect of the Lennox Library, and presented to Mr. Lennox. It's the first globe to represent any portion of the Western Hemisphere.
Where are we on that globe?
We're up here in uncharted seas. What is represented
Sounds like business as usual.
is South America here. It says Terra Brazil, Mundus Novus.
Terra Sun.
This, the island of Isabel, is what is today Cuba, and the island labeled Hispaniola is what's today Haiti and the Dominican Republic. This dates from about 1510.
What is this other treasure? Is it a Shakespeare's folio?
Yes. This is the first collected edition of the works of William Shakespeare, published in 1623. It's probably the most sought-after book in English literature.
Is that because of its rarity or its cultural value?
Well, it's a first edition in that it prints for the first time 18 plays by Shakespeare, so that half of the plays in the volume, there are 36 altogether, are here for the first time. It's a fairly common book as rare books go, in that there are well over 200 copies known. This library having 6, 5 in the rare book division, 1 in the Berg collection. The Folger Library has over 80, but they made a specialty of collecting them. These have come from the Lennox Library, the Tilden Library, the Astor Library.
1623.
1623. It was after his death, but it's possible that the work on the volume may have...
Can we turn some of the pages?
Sure.
I noticed a poem, is that an inscription in the front of this volume?
There's a...
Right on this page.
Right, this is a poem by Ben Jonson in praise of Shakespeare. The distinction between comedies, histories, and tragedies is not quite the distinction we would make. Some things they consider tragedies, we today put under comedies. It begins with The Tempest, which is generally considered Shakespeare's last play.
What does it end with?
I believe it ends with Cymbeline. Yes, the tragedy of Cymbeline. Now crack a noble heart. Good night, sweet prince, and flights of angels sing thee to thy rest.
Good night, sweet Matson. Thank you very much for being with us.
My pleasure.
We're now in the exhibition room of the Berg collection. This extraordinary collection also doubles as an art gallery. Lola Zladitz, Dr. Zladitz, is the keeper of this rare and special collection. Can you describe the portraits in this room? What is in this room, and how did it evolve to this form?
Well, it used to be, at one point, a part of the library's actually orchestra room. Chamber music was played there, and some of our old-timers still remembered it as the gallery, where on Sunday afternoons chamber music played. To get back to your question of what is in the room, you will see the cases, which has books and exhibition cases on top, the flat ones, which are sometimes compared to glove compartments in department stores, are our exhibition cases. But the walls, and to quote from our minutes and Dr. Berg's will, at the pleasure of the trustees, we hang what was once in the Lenox collection of paintings.
All of these George Washington portraits were in the Lenox collection?
Not all of them, no. The one by Gilbert Stuart facing us as we come in, which is our full-length and #1 Gilbert Stuart portrait, and which may remind you of what is known as the Lansdowne type of George Washington. This one is very close to that in posture. But that was in the Lenox collection. It's known as the Monroe Lenox type, and if I sound too technical, it's because Washington's portraits, as you know, are classed by certain types. If I may just go back for one moment to the three-quarter portrait of George Washington, which was once the property of Alexander Hamilton's, and we call that the Constable type of George Washington because of there again, the merchant who commissioned the painting, who was a certain constable, which has the seascape in the background. I would say for Provenance, that's a lovely one.
There are also Copleys in this room. Can you tell us about them?
The two Copleys, yes, Lady Wentworth with the little squirrel. And you may remember her as a lady of not entirely pure repute. She was everybody's friend in Byron's circle. And then the other Copley, both of them incidentally were lent to a major Copley show, and they traveled. The other Copley is one of Mrs. Robert Hooper.
And there's an Augustus John as well.
The Augustus John is the recent edition, which came as a gift to the library when John Quinn's manuscript collection was presented long after his death to the manuscript division. The portrait of Mr. Quinn, John Quinn, which is called The Man from New York, shows him in exactly the kind of pose that we like to remember John Quinn. Very cold, very calculating, and a lovely red cane in the right hand. He was a great collector. Not
There is
all of them were Lenox paintings.
painting from the Lenox collection of Robert Lenox done by John Trumbull. That's a rather famous...
That's James Lennox's father.
That's why...
And mother. Yes, they're a lovely pair. They're the ones hanging next to the Copleys and surrounding the bust of Owen D. Young.
And who is Kitty Fisher, painted by Sir Joshua Reynolds?
Well, I don't want to say she was a lady of ill repute, but that's what she was in the 18th century.
Is that the only way to get yourself committed to canvas?
Let's say she was an actress, to make it a little more. Probably one of the ways. I don't know whether it's the only way.
There are other things, in fact, rather curious things to be included in this collection. Chinese porcelains, a writing desk, a gas lamp. Can you tell us some things about those objects?
The appointments in this room, as Dr. Berg called those objects, were partly transported from his house on East 71st Street, from his home. So you see certain things which you wouldn't see otherwise. Actually, you see a piece of Renaissance sculpture over the door. Dr. Berg, still in his lifetime, attended to the plans and the installation of the entire room. He had Austrian oak imported. What you see is Austrian oak paneling, because his family had originally come as very poor immigrants from Austria. Over the door you see what is the oldest piece, the oldest work of art on 42nd Street, and that's a Giovanni della Robbia. It's part of a triptych. It's a replica, a picture of Moses to illustrate the Old Testament. What you see in the cabinet when you refer to the Chinese or Japanese vases, they're not very good china. Don't kid yourself.
No, but nonetheless, interestingly enough, these porcelains were acquired from the Morgan collection. How did you come by them?
It's because one or two items, not all, no, not by a long shot, because when the Morgan collection was dispersed, Dr. Berg bought some. And these, I would say, are from Morgan's kitchen, the third or fourth string of vases. There is, of course, an interesting corner. There I would agree with you, and probably Dr. Berg's favorite corner, because there too he made left special instructions where and how we were to place it. We couldn't follow through, but what I call the altar, what you see under the memorial tablet, Dr. Berg left instructions that we keep his jewelry. And in front of it, we were to keep opened up with all three wings what used to be Charles Dickens's writing desk. Now there are several Dickens desks. There's one in Philadelphia. The Free Library in Philadelphia has one. As you may know, Charles Dickens's sister-in-law, Georgina Hogarth, after Mrs. Dickens's death, she kept house for Charles Dickens. And after his death, she made a living, especially this side of the Atlantic, by selling to American collectors Dickens objects, which she herself authenticated. Dr. Berg always believed that this was Dickens's desk, and he asked very specifically that it be located in front of his jewelry case with all three wings spread out. We have a picture of it just in that position.
Did Dr. Berg require that a carnation be exhibited on this desk?
No. That's something I do out of memory, charity. No.
Is your story of the...
It is homage, as you say, and it's because Dr. Berg, and in New York still, many people remember this habit. He always wore a red carnation, even at the operating table. After the death of his brother, in whose memory he actually gave and endowed his collection, he stopped wearing the red carnation, so I provide the missing carnation.
Tell us about this vitrine, Dr. Zladic. Is this an Eliot wasteland that you have here?
It is the original manuscript of Eliot's Wasteland, in which, as you know, he collaborated with Ezra Pound, who made the cuttings, and he provided what he himself called the Acts of a Midwife. This is Ezra Pound. When in 1922 Ezra Pound finally received the first draft, he felt Eliot was too wordy. So many of the passages we know, we now know from the facsimile edition, have been cut. The first edition is an expurgated, much briefer version, as you know. It is now part of a new exhibition which we call Literature in Exile. That's why we have it on exhibition together with the early poems. With Prufrock, you're looking also at a manuscript of Prufrock.
For how long can the public see this exhibition?
Certainly through the 1st of May. If it's popular, we'll extend it.
We look forward to that.
Thank you.
I'm not accustomed to asking for funds, but I'm not averse to it either when the cause is as important or as worthy as this. The libraries are important to each of us. And for those of you who would like to contribute something to help the library, you may send any contribution to Box 2211, Grand Central Station, New York 117.